Hello there, I'm Aileen. At my sister's wedding, she handed me a worn-out dress and said, "It suits you better." I smiled, but I left. What followed wasn't just embarrassment. It was a lifetime of being quietly erased. They replaced me in the family photos, took my name off the ceremony list, gave away my role. And when I finally stood up for myself, my mother said I was never family to begin with. It wasn't just one wedding. It was every moment before and after where I was told, without words, that I didn't belong. I stepped out of the Uber, heels clicking against the sun-baked stone driveway of the Whitmore estate. The humidity hugged me tight, Charleston air thick with the perfume of roses and old money. I took in the scene, white canopies, perfectly lined champagne flutes, and the murmur of Southern charm. Everyone looked like they'd been rehearsing their smiles for weeks. I was the only one dragging her own suitcase through the main entrance like a late check-in. No one turned to greet me. No one rushed over. Just a wedding planner with bleached teeth and a clipboard who glanced at me over her sunglasses and said, "Ah, Miss Aileen, right? You're in one of the garden rooms. It's, simple but cozy." Her smile was tight, practiced, like the kind you give a customer who's about to leave a bad Yelp review. I gave her a nod, walked past two groomsmen adjusting their collars in the mirror, and headed toward my assigned suite. The inside of the room was what I'd call Southern antique chic, if I were feeling generous. Cream curtains, pale blue bedding, and an overpowering lavender potpourri scent that clung to my throat. Jolene had always known how to make me feel like a tourist in my own family. I'd barely unpacked when I got the text, "Come to the Oak Room. I have something for you, Jay." That emoji alone told me this wasn't kindness. When I entered, she was already surrounded by her bridal crew, 6 women in matching silk robes, sipping mimosas and laughing like life was a rom-com, and they were the stars. She spotted me and waved like I was a distant acquaintance, not her sister. "Oh, good, you came," she said brightly. "I have something special for you." She handed me a long, narrow garment box. It looked like it had been stored under someone's bed for years. I opened it. Satin, pale gold, with visible creases and faint discoloration around the underarms. The kind of thing you'd find on a discount rack at a thrift store and wonder who died in it. "It suits you better," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Her tone was syrupy, but her eyes were knives. One of the bridesmaids snorted behind her mimosa. "It's got that vintage vibe," she whispered, not bothering to lower her voice. "Very nostalgic." Another chimed in, "Honestly, it's got character, just like Aileen, timeless." And then came the laughter, sharp, rehearsed, layered with sugar and venom. I smiled politely, because I'd been taught not to cause a scene, because if I said what I really wanted to say, it would have ruined the mood. And ruining Jolene's mood was a cardinal sin in this family. I ran my hand over the fabric. It had been altered. Poorly. The seams puckered at the waist, the hem uneven. Not only was it secondhand, it had been tampered with. My size wasn't even that different from Jolene's, but this thing had clearly been cinched and stitched to fit someone else's idea of what I should look like. "You know," Jolene said, turning to the group like she was hosting a talk show, "this used to be one of my favorites back when I was, 20? It's got history." Then, turning back to me, "I knew you'd appreciate that." She didn't mean the dress, she meant the humiliation. I held it up to the light, inspecting it like a museum piece. "Thank you," I said. "It's definitely memorable." They laughed again. I didn't. I excused myself before I could say something sharp enough to slit open the mood. Back in my room, I hung the dress on the closet door. It looked even worse in direct light, like someone had tried to scrub out stains that wouldn't lift. A metaphor, maybe. This wasn't the first time Jolene had pulled something like this. It was just the first time she'd done it so publicly. Birthdays that passed with nothing more than a text, promotions she never mentioned. Even at Dad's funeral, she'd acted like I was just the person who arranged the chairs. They called me strong, independent, the one who didn't need anything. But really, I was just the one who stopped asking. I stood in front of the mirror and held the dress up to my body. The reflection didn't lie. It didn't fit. It never did. I knew what this was. A warning dressed as a gift. It said, Stay in your place. Don't try to shine. And if you show up anyway, wear something that proves you don't belong. But here's the thing about growing up invisible. Eventually, you learn how to watch. You learn how to listen for what isn't being said. And right now, what wasn't being said was the truth. That truth? I was done playing along. I smoothed the dress down and smiled. A real smile this time, because they had just handed me a reason to stop pretending. And I'd never been one to waste an opportunity, because I was done pretending. But they were far from done pushing me. By the time the sun dipped behind the oaks and the twinkle lights lit up the outdoor patio, I had ironed the dress, pulled my hair into something passable, and touched up my lip gloss like I belonged. That was my mistake, thinking I still had a role to play in a show I wasn't even cast in. The rehearsal dinner buzzed with energy, plates clinking, champagne flutes rising in toasts that didn't include my name. I waited, expecting someone to tell me where to stand, what to do, as maid of honor. After all, Jolene had named me that 6 months ago in a text full of hearts and fake sentiment. Instead, during the first toast, Jolene wrapped an arm around Holly, her sorority sister with platinum curls and Botox at 30, and said, "This beautiful woman right here is my rock, my soul sister, and my maid of honor." She raised her glass. Everyone followed. My fingers gripped the edge of my wine glass so tight I thought it might crack. She didn't even look at me, didn't offer an explanation, not even a sideways glance. When I finally found a quiet moment with her by the oyster bar, I asked, "When did Holly become your maid of honor?" Jolene popped a shrimp cocktail in her mouth, wiped her fingers daintily, and said, "Oh, last month? Honestly, you've been so busy with your career stuff. I didn't want to stress you out. Holly's here more. She just fits the aesthetic better, you know?" I stared at her. "Fits the aesthetic?" She shrugged. "It's coastal garden glam, Aileen. You're more structured." I laughed. One dry, humorless exhale. Right, because nothing says glam like betrayal served on a silver platter. Jolene leaned in, eyes sharp. "Don't make this about you." I didn't reply, because I knew if I said one more word, I'd explode. And if there's one thing my mother warned me about, it was making scenes. Speak of the devil. Not 2 minutes after that exchange, Dolores found me standing alone near the terrace. She looked impeccable, of course. Pearl earrings, that wine-colored wrap dress she only wore to impressive events. She touched my elbow like she always did when she was about to say something manipulative wrapped in concern. "Sweetheart, can I offer a little advice?" she said, already talking before I could answer. "Let this be Jolene's moment. Please, don't make it complicated." I raised an eyebrow. Complicated? She's under a lot of pressure. You know how emotional she gets. And people are watching. This family, we've always held ourselves with grace. I tilted my head. Meaning what exactly? She smiled, tight, polished, and empty. Meaning smile even when it hurts. That's what women like us do. I almost choked on the hypocrisy. She hadn't smiled at me since 2009. "And you," she added, "you've always been the calm one, the mature one. That's why I never had to worry about you, unlike Jolene." Right. Because being the forgotten child meant I was the convenient one, the quiet placeholder, the safety net. Dolores looked at my dress. "That's the gown she gave you, huh? It's different." "Yeah," I said. "It screams forgotten attic box." She gave a chuckle that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Well, you know your sister. Always sentimental. If sentimentality meant cutting someone out and laughing about it behind their back, then sure." I walked away before she could say more. Found a seat at the far edge of the lawn, near the fountain, where the string quartet's music was a murmur and not a migraine. And then came the photos. "Family shots!" the photographer called. "Bride side, let's get everyone in!" People started lining up. I stood ready to join when a woman with a camera and headset stopped me. "Oh, sorry, bride side only for this set." I blinked. "I'm her sister." The woman flushed. I was told this was for parents and the bridal party?" Of course she was. I didn't argue. I just turned and walked back to my seat. It wasn't worth it. Not the pictures, not the smile I would have had to fake. Later that night, I scrolled through Jolene's Instagram. Photos from every angle, laughing, sipping champagne, hugging Holly, posing with Dolores and our dad like a perfect portrait family. I wasn't in a single frame, not even the background. That was the point. I stared at the screen for a long time. Not out of shock, just confirmation. They weren't just ignoring me anymore. They were writing me out in real time. Eventually, one of the caterers passed by and paused. "You okay, ma'am? Would you like another glass of wine?" I looked up. The garden lights danced in his glasses. "Are you family or guest?" he added, trying to clarify. I smiled. "That depends who you ask." So I stopped looking for my name. I knew it wouldn't be there. Saturday morning brought the rehearsal brunch. I arrived a little early. Habit, I guess. Even when they make you feel like a shadow, you show up on time. The ballroom was already buzzing, music humming low, plates being set with silver trim and calligraphed place cards. Everything screamed perfection, right down to the custom napkins embossed with Jolene and Reuben. I made my way toward the seating chart pinned to a massive gold frame near the entrance. Guests crowded around it, laughing, pointing at their names. I stood there longer than I should have, scanning every row. Tables 1 through 13, names printed neatly in navy ink, all visible, all accounted for. Mine wasn't there. I squinted, checked again. My last name, my first. Any variation, nothing. A woman with a headset approached, holding a clipboard. "Miss Aileen? I believe you're at table 14. It's just over by the side exit, past the buffet station." I followed her finger. I hadn't missed it. Table 14 wasn't even listed. She added with a half-hearted smile, "It's more private, intimate. Better for catching your breath, you know?" "Sure. Or for being out of sight." I didn't respond. I walked slowly, passing through clusters of people greeting each other like long-lost friends. I made my way past the wine cart, the dessert display, and finally found it. Table 14. A two-top, jammed near the fire exit, directly beside a stack of folded chairs, and a door propped open with a sandbag. The place card read Aileen in hurried ink. No floral print, no gold foil. Just a name scribbled as an afterthought. I stared at it for a long time. The laughter from the main tables echoed like a taunt. I could see Jolene at the center, gesturing wildly as she told some dramatic story, no doubt about how she once saved a bird or broke a heel. The crowd leaned in, captivated. I wasn't angry, not yet. I was resigned. As I turned to leave the table, I passed a display of framed photos set on easels. Wedding photos of our parents, a baby photo of Jolene, a graduation shot, her in white cap and gown, Dolores clutching her like she'd birthed royalty. But there was no photo of me. Not from high school, not college, not Christmases, not a single one. They didn't just forget. I'd been edited out. A large canvas print hung near the dance floor, Jolene and Dolores at Jolene's high school graduation. I remember being there. I took the damn picture. No sign of me in it. I wandered into the restroom, needing space more than anything. Inside, soft music played overhead, lavender soap foamed at the sink, and the air smelled like fake citrus and judgment. 2 bridesmaids entered, talking loud enough to be heard in another state. I swear, did you see the look on her face when she realized she was at the table for leftovers? "Right?" the other laughed. "That dress, though, like something you'd find at a thrift store's clearance bin." I froze in the stall. The first one lowered her voice, but not enough. "I mean, she's Jolene's sister, but she gives guest energy, you know?" "I give her credit, though," the second replied. "She's mastered the art of being invisible." They laughed. Water ran. One of them reapplied lip gloss. "She should have just RSVP'd no and saved everyone the tension." Or worn something less sad. They left. I stayed. 5 more minutes, maybe 10. Then I flushed the toilet, stepped out, looked at myself in the mirror. And for once, I didn't adjust my hair. Didn't check my lipstick. I just looked. At myself. At the woman they couldn't bother to include, but somehow still feared enough to mock. I walked out of that restroom and back into the reception with no expression. No storming off, no words. I passed my table, looked at the place card again, then picked it up and dropped it in the trash bin beside the catering door. I wasn't going to raise my voice. Not yet. But this? This was the last time they shrank me and expected me to stay small. You don't get to erase me and expect me to stay silent. And it turned out, I wasn't the only one noticing the cracks. Saturday evening, the light had turned honey gold through the ballroom windows, and people moved like clockwork between the lounge, the reception hall, and the outdoor courtyard where the cocktail hour buzzed with energy. I'd stepped away, just for a breather. No real destination, just space. That's when I saw Reuben. He stood alone by the bar, nursing what looked like the same glass of whiskey from earlier. One hand in his pocket, the other tapping the rim of the glass rhythmically, like he was keeping time with a silent thought. He saw me before I could look away. "Aileen," he said, with a nod that wasn't quite casual, but not stiff either. I walked over. I didn't plan to. My legs just moved, maybe because he was the only person in this circus who hadn't looked at me like I was a prop that didn't match the set. "Did Jolene always talk to you that way?" he asked before I could say anything. I blinked. "Excuse me?" He looked down at his drink. The tone, the little digs. I don't know. I used to think it was sibling banter, but lately it feels like something else. There was no accusation in his voice, just confusion, like someone realizing the map they'd been following was wrong all along. "She's always known how to fill a room," I said, careful. He nodded slowly. "Yeah, but now I'm wondering who she has to push out of the frame to do it." That line sat between us for a second too long. He didn't wait for an answer, just nodded again and turned back toward the main room. Later, during the walkthrough of the ceremony flow, I noticed it. Reuben wasn't holding her hand when the coordinator walked them through the aisle steps. He stood just behind her, nodding, but distant. When she laughed too loud, he didn't join in. When she tried to pull him into a joke with the groomsmen, he offered a smile that didn't touch his eyes. Dolores noticed. She glanced at them more than once, lips pressed tight. But Inez, his mother, watched everything with the calm calculation of a woman who's lived through worse and always landed on her feet. She wasn't subtle, but she didn't need to be. Her son was slipping away from the grip of this illusion, and she wasn't going to stop it. Jolene didn't seem to notice. She was too busy orchestrating moments for the photographer, adjusting her bouquet angle, practicing her tilt, making sure every strand of hair knew its place. It would have been funny if it hadn't been so pathetic. I stepped outside for air. That's when I met her, a woman in her mid-30s, sipping a glass of white wine with the kind of relaxed posture that said she wasn't part of this show, just attending it. She offered a kind smile. "You're Jolene's sister, right?" she asked. I nodded, waiting for the punchline. "I thought so. It's strange, though. I've been looking through all the photos and slideshows they've been showing inside. I didn't see you in any of them." Her voice wasn't cruel. It wasn't even suspicious. Just casually confused, the way someone points out that a chair is missing from the table. I offered a tight smile. "Guess I'm just not very photogenic." She tilted her head. "That can't be it." She was gone before I could explain away the discomfort. I leaned against the porch railing, looking out at the field lights flickering on in the distance. There were dozens of people here. Dozens of ways Jolene had crafted this image of herself. And yet, even strangers were starting to see through it. That did something to me. It wasn't revenge that crossed my mind. It was clarity. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to shove my way into the spotlight. What I needed was to stop stepping aside. If even Reuben, Mr. "We're just excited to build a future together," was seeing the cracks, maybe this wasn't just in my head. Maybe it never was. And maybe Jolene's version of reality wasn't as airtight as she thought. The best part about the truth? It doesn't need a spotlight. It just needs someone to stop dimming it. And I wasn't going to dim it anymore. I was done being polite. The bridal suite waiting area smelled like hairspray, cheap champagne, and manufactured serenity. The kind of place where fake tears dried quicker than real ones. The wedding was just hours away. Jolene was somewhere down the hall making last-minute demands about floral placement or lighting. I sat in the corner, pretending to scroll through my phone while trying not to exist too loudly. That's when Ellie, Jolene's 10-year-old daughter, ran in, breathless and giggling, her tablet in one hand and Jolene's phone in the other. "Oops! Mommy forgot this," she chirped, dropping the phone on the couch next to me before skipping off. I didn't plan to touch it, but the screen lit up. A new text thread flashed open. One Ellie had clearly been playing around in before the phone locked. The message at the top read, "Gave her the old dress. LOL. Looked pathetic. She still wore it." Underneath it, another one from Jolene herself. "She's so desperate to be included. It's almost sad." My stomach clenched, but my hands stayed steady. I pressed the side button and took a screenshot. Then another. And another. She hadn't just humiliated me. She bragged about it. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a campaign. Finally, I had something more than bruised feelings. I had evidence. Before I could process what to do next, Ellie came bounding back into the room. "Aunt Aileen, do you really not have a family?" I turned slowly. "What?" She looked up at me, blinking innocently. "Mom says you're jealous because you don't have a husband or kids or a house. That you're just mad because no one picked you." The words hit harder than they should have, coming from a child. But children don't lie. They repeat. I forced a smile. "That's not something you should worry about, sweetheart." She nodded, not really understanding, and ran off again. I sat there a moment longer, the phone burning in my pocket now. My breath felt shallow, not because of the insult, but because of the clarity. I stood and walked with purpose. Dolores was in the lounge, sipping her lukewarm tea and pretending she didn't see me approach. She looked up, surprised by my expression. "We need to talk," I said. She sighed. "Aileen, not now. This isn't—" I cut her off. "I saw Jolene's texts." That got her attention. Her jaw clenched slightly, but her eyes didn't widen. No guilt, no panic, just calculation. She laughed about that dress, said I looked pathetic, that she gave it to me to embarrass me. Dolores didn't even blink. "You should be grateful she even let you attend." "Let me attend?" I stared at her, stunned. "You've never really been part of this family," she added, voice flat. "Jolene's always been special. You've always been fine. There's a difference." That sentence, so casual, so sharp, sliced right through the years of fake smiles and thankless effort. Never been part of this family. I took a deep breath, then looked her straight in the eye. "You've made your choice. I'm making mine." She opened her mouth to speak, but I didn't let her. "If Jolene pushes again, she won't get silence in return. This was your last warning." And I meant it. I wasn't yelling, I wasn't begging, I was done with both. Dolores didn't stop me as I walked out. She didn't call after me, because somewhere deep down she knew the dam had cracked. The daughter she could overlook had found something louder than approval. Conviction. They thought silence was weakness. I was about to teach them it was strategy. And I wasn't wearing gloves anymore. The hallway outside the bridal dressing room had a chill to it. Not from the temperature, Charleston was humid even in spring, but from the mood. You could feel the tension crawling along the walls like static, too thick to ignore. The ceremony was 2 hours away, and everyone moved like glass, fragile, shiny, about to shatter. I was leaning against a narrow window ledge, sipping lukewarm coffee from a paper cup, when Inez approached. She didn't smile, just nodded for me to follow her into a quieter alcove. "I've been watching," she began softly. "Longer than you think." I didn't say a word, just tilted my head slightly. I'd learned silence often speaks louder than questions. Inez pulled a thin folder from her purse, the kind that makes a satisfying snap when you open it flat. Inside were printed emails, clearly dated and highlighted, legal correspondence, one from Ruben's attorney, another from Jolene's email. "She was supposed to sign a prenup," Inez said. "It's standard in our family, but she dodged it. Lied, cried, stalled." She pointed to a message time-stamped 3 weeks ago. "I don't think he'll push it. He's too in love. I can distract him if needed." That line punched me harder than I expected. "She never planned to protect him," Inez added. "She planned to use him." I looked up at her. "Why are you telling me this?" She took a deep breath. "Because he won't believe it coming from me, but he might hear it if it comes from you." "And you want me to tell him?" "No," she said, "not unless it falls apart. But if it does, I want you ready." I closed the folder, handed it back. "I'm not here to protect anyone anymore. I'm here to stop pretending." Her eyes didn't soften, but they warmed, just slightly. As I turned to walk away, she asked one last thing. "If today goes bad, will you speak up?" I paused, then nodded. "Loud enough for everyone." Back in the hallway, I barely made it 10 steps before Jolene cornered me. heels clicking like accusations on the marble floor. "Oh, look, the martyr returns," she sneered. "Should I cue the sad violin?" I faced her fully, calm, collected. "No music needed," I replied. "But maybe a mirror." She blinked, caught off guard by my tone. "Still playing perfect?" I asked. "You might want to rehearse what honesty feels like. It's coming for you." She smirked, trying to gather control. "This is why no one ever takes you seriously, Aileen. And yet here you are, cornering me in a hallway, hoping I'll stay quiet." She flinched. "Don't worry," I added. "I won't ruin your big day. The truth will handle that for me." And I walked away. Out in the corridor, a group of bridesmaids were fussing over a torn hem, nervous giggles floating around. I stopped just long enough to be heard. "You might want to check with Ruben," I said loud enough for the entire room. "There's a few surprises coming. This show's almost over." Gasps. One of them dropped her mimosa glass. Another muttered, "What the hell is she talking about?" Jolene's pale face peeked around the corner. She looked like she'd seen a ghost, and that ghost was her own reflection. I didn't need to ruin the wedding. I just had to tell the truth and let it do the rest. By the time the sun dipped low and turned the sky a rich, theatrical gold, we were already gathering. The open-air venue was every inch the overproduced dream Jolene had promised. Rows of crisp white chairs arranged with military precision along a winding cobblestone path, petals scattered like confetti, a massive floral arch that looked more like a set piece from a period drama than something meant for real people. Everything about the setup screamed curated perfection, the kind of beauty that only exists to be posted, shared, and envied. Just like everything Jolene touched. Guests murmured politely, fanning themselves with the custom-printed programs that doubled as vanity pieces. Most didn't know each other, invited for show, not sentiment. Everyone looked just hot enough to be irritable, just invested enough to pretend. I stood off to the side, deliberately out of frame. Not hidden, just apart. Watching. Watching Jolene in her lace and glitter. Watching Ruben in his tailored navy suit, standing beneath that ridiculous arch like two porcelain figures at the top of a cake. She held his hand like it was part of her costume, another accessory to match the peonies, the pearls, the pre-approved playlist. When the music began, she gave his fingers a little squeeze, rehearsed and purposeful, like she could choreograph his pulse. A woman conducting a man. But it wasn't her that caught my attention. It was Ruben. That half smile on his face, the way his eyes didn't match it. They weren't dead, just somewhere else. Like he was watching himself from a distance, unsure of how he got here. The officiant cleared his throat and began, his voice smooth and neutral, as if he hadn't officiated 6 other weddings that month. Jolene adjusted her veil slowly, deliberately, like she was waiting for the spotlight to swing her way. And then, just when the fantasy reached its highest, most fragile note, Inez stepped out from the front row. It was quiet at first, a whisper of movement. Some people didn't even notice until they saw the phone in her hand. "I'm sorry," she said, and her voice didn't tremble. "But this needs to be heard before anyone says I do." The crowd shifted, the music hiccuped, a collective intake of breath, like the moment before lightning strikes. She tapped the screen. Jolene's voice, unmistakable, rang out from the small speaker. Not a whisper, not a joke. Clear, confident, recorded in full belief she was untouchable. "Ruben's sweet, but he's not exactly hard to manage. Honestly, he's trainable. Like a golden retriever in a tux." Gasps. Not movie gasps, not dramatic ones. Real, uncomfortable sounds of shock. A champagne flute slipped from someone's fingers and shattered against stone. The officiant stopped mid-sentence, blinking. The spell broke. Jolene froze for half a second, then snapped into action. Her mask slipped but didn't shatter. She went for the phone, fast, eyes blazing. "You bitter old witch, you set this up!" But Inez didn't flinch. She just stepped back, serene. "I'm protecting my son. You already set this up. You just forgot who was watching." Ruben stood perfectly still, no emotion on his face at first, just stillness. He looked at Jolene like a man finally seeing the bottom of a well he'd fallen into. Then he spoke, into the mic clipped to his lapel. Quiet, honest. "I'd rather call off a wedding than walk into a lie." The words echoed. Nobody moved, nobody breathed. Jolene let out a disbelieving laugh, trying to pull the narrative back. Seriously? You're believing them over me? They've been against me since day one. This is jealousy. It's sabotage. I stepped forward, not to gloat, just to finish what she started. No one plotted anything, Jolene. You just couldn't keep the mask on long enough. This isn't sabotage. This is truth, finally breathing. She turned to me, eyes sharp, voice venomous. You've always hated me. I met her gaze, steady. No, I stopped letting you write my story. And then Reuben turned, really turned, saw me, not as a pawn or a warning or a half-remembered regret, but as someone real. He stepped back from Jolene. She spun to the crowd, her voice shrill now. You all know me. You know this isn't who I am. Someone say something. But the silence was louder than anything she could say. Then Inez moved again, quiet but firm, standing beside her son like a shield made of truth. I know who my son is, and I know what he deserves. That was the crack. The air seemed to shift. Something invisible but essential snapped. Reuben looked at the officiant. We're done here. And that was it. He stepped down. Jolene didn't follow. Couldn't. She stood trembling, bouquet limp in her hand, caught between fury and disbelief, between wanting to scream and realizing it was too late. She turned and fled, because that's what it was, not walking out, not reclaiming dignity. It was running. Her heels clipped awkwardly on the stones, makeup streaking, her dream unraveling thread by thread in front of everyone she'd handpicked to witness her triumph. Dolores followed at a distance. No words, just that same cool elegance she'd perfected for decades. But just before disappearing behind the curtained entrance, she looked back at me. No fury, no contempt, just grief, just loss. The kind of heartbreak that happens when you realize too late you bet on the wrong daughter. I didn't move, didn't chase, didn't collapse. I just stood there, breathing. That wasn't vengeance, I thought. That was clarity. The chairs stayed full for a moment longer, people unsure of protocol, unsure if applause or condolences were appropriate. But none of it mattered. The wedding was over. And somewhere deep beneath the ruins of it all, something truer had finally begun. Twilight had crept over Charleston, like a secret being kept too long, cloaking the skyline in bruised purples and soft grays. From the window of the private lounge tucked behind the reception hall, I could see the last of the sunlight bleeding behind the low country rooftops. The sheer curtains stirred slightly in the breeze, but nothing else moved. Inside, the air was thick, soaked in everything unsaid, everything undone. It no longer smelled like celebration. It smelled like the aftermath. Grief has a weight to it, and tonight, it had settled over the room, pushing down on everything that had once been upright. I sat on a velvet settee near the tall window, alone, my fingertips slowly circling the rim of a melted candle stuck inside a cut glass holder. Its flame had long since gone out, leaving behind a pool of wax and smoke. Outside, catering staff moved in tired patterns, clearing smeared plates and half-eaten slices of fondant-covered cake from abandoned tables. Somewhere, a champagne flute toppled, landed on its side, and rolled gently to a stop. No one picked it up. An hour ago, this had been a wedding. Now it was a ghost town with fairy lights. There had been no first dance, no bouquet toss, no toasts full of inside jokes and polite laughter, just gasps, phone recordings, accusations, and the sound of 100 whispered exits. One by one, guests had slipped out, eyes wide, mouths tight. The show was over, and no one wanted to be caught in the credits. I hadn't seen Jolene since she'd bolted down the aisle like a cornered animal. I didn't expect to. I figured she was licking her wounds somewhere, rewriting the story in her head already, trying to cast herself as the wronged heroine. Let her. What I didn't expect was Dolores. The door didn't open. It slammed, and then she appeared. My mother. Elegant, imposing, angry in that specific way only she knew how to be. Cold, calculated, and absolutely sure she was in the right. Her heels clicked sharply against the wood floor as she approached, like punctuation marks to a sentence she'd been practicing all night. You couldn't just sit back, could you? Her voice cut through the stillness like a whip. You had to humiliate her in front of everyone. I turned my head slowly, deliberately. met her eyes without flinching. No one made Jolene say those things, Mom. She recorded herself. Dolores's lips thinned. You've always been jealous. That word, jealous, drifted into the room like smoke from a fire I didn't start. I didn't react. Not anymore. She was finally having her moment, she hissed, and you couldn't stand it. I tilted my head, studied her. Not the way a daughter studies a mother, but the way you look at a stranger you once trusted with your secrets. This is who you defend? I asked quietly. After everything? Dolores's jaw tensed. She's your sister. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. No, she's your favorite project. Your second chance. Not mine. Her arms folded across her chest, the defensive posture of someone used to control. You've always thought you were better than us. Just because you left, got your little job, my little job paid for your medical bills last year, I said, my voice flat. Silence. The kind that isn't empty but full, of shame, of unacknowledged truth. She blinked. Once. Then again, harder, like she could reset the moment. You're not part of this family anymore. Those words weren't new. I'd heard them before, wrapped in passive aggression and holiday arguments, but this time, they didn't land. They didn't stick. I'd finally developed armor. I stood slowly, smoothed the creases of my dress, not because I needed to, but because I could. I took a breath, long and deep, and let it fill the space she'd tried to shrink me into for most of my life. Then stop expecting me to act like I am. Her face shifted, just for a second, a twitch near her eyes, a flicker of something behind the anger, regret maybe, or recognition. But I didn't care anymore. I wasn't waiting for her to catch up. I stepped past her, paused at her shoulder, close enough for her to feel the distance between us. You chose your silence, I said. I chose the truth. That's the difference. And then I walked out. Into the courtyard, into air that didn't press down. The garden was quiet now, stripped of guests, but the scent of the hundreds of cut roses Jolene had insisted on still lingered. I passed the fountain she'd demanded be installed for the aesthetic. The water still flowed, steady, oblivious. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Every step I took didn't feel like I was leaving something behind. It felt like I was stepping into myself, unburdened, unmuted, real, like peeling off a skin someone else had sewn around me. This wasn't exile. This wasn't betrayal. This was liberation. This was the beginning of something truer than any bloodline or last name. Because here's the truth. You can only be erased if you keep showing up to be written out. And I was done offering up blank pages. So I stopped asking to be let in and started living like I was already free. It had been exactly 1 week since the wedding that never happened. The Denver skyline welcomed me back like an old friend, quiet, steady, never demanding I perform. I stepped into my apartment, dropped my keys in the bowl by the door, and didn't cry. Not because I wasn't sad, but because sadness no longer controlled the narrative. It was simply part of it. There were no texts from Jolene, no apology, no explanation. Not even a passive-aggressive quote shared to social media like she used to post when she wanted me to feel guilty but couldn't bring herself to speak. Dolores left a voicemail, short, tense. You went too far, but I guess we all did. I didn't call her back. I didn't need to. That message wasn't for me. It was for herself. A cracked admission she wasn't ready to make fully, and I wasn't about to beg for it. I spent that Monday cleaning. There was a particular kind of therapy in scrubbing out someone else's residue from your space. The worn dress, still wrinkled, still a joke, was folded into a donation bag. I didn't burn it. I didn't even rip it. That would mean it had power. Instead, I let it go like the clutter it was. The wedding fallout had gone quietly viral, not in a scandalous tabloid kind of way, but in wedding forums, planning groups, a few TikToks that blurred faces but didn't spare tone. One video of the moment Ruben called things off was titled, "When the Groom Finally Sees the Truth." The comments were ruthless. She called him trainable? Yikes. Imagine dodging that bullet in a tux. I didn't engage, but I saw. By Wednesday, Jolene had deleted all her wedding posts. Her sponsorship links were broken. A friend of mine who worked for a regional planner sent a quick text. She's not getting booked again anytime soon. Vendors talk. I typed thanks, but never hit send. It didn't matter. Vindication wasn't a dish to serve warm or cold. It just sat there. Quiet. Factual. That same evening, I sat down with a blank page and wrote a letter I never intended to send. It began, "Mom, I didn't need you to choose me. I just needed you to see me." It ended, "You never did." Then I hit delete. Closure isn't always something you hand to someone else. Sometimes it's a weight you put down silently and leave behind on the sidewalk. That Saturday, I met Vanessa, my old roommate, for brunch. She didn't ask what happened. She just slid me a mimosa and said, "You look like you slept for the first time in months." We laughed, really laughed. When the waiter came over and asked, "Table for one?" I answered without hesitation, "Not anymore." We shared a plate of lemon ricotta pancakes and traded bad date stories like high schoolers. There was no mention of dresses or altars or who said what behind whose back, just now and next. On the walk home, I didn't check my phone for missed calls. I didn't need to. I wasn't waiting for a reunion. I wasn't writing an ending that included them. This wasn't about forgiveness. This was about space, about becoming something whole outside the outline someone else drew for me. Because here's the thing, you don't always get the family you want, but you always have the power to become the person they can't define. They say family is where you're supposed to feel most seen, but what happens when the people who raised you never really looked at you at all? If you've ever been the easy one, the quiet one, or the one who kept swallowing pain just to keep peace, let me tell you something I wish someone told me sooner. Silence doesn't make you strong, and it doesn't make you invisible either. It just delays the moment you finally choose yourself. I didn't walk away from my family to hurt them. I walked away to heal me. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is stop asking to belong in places that refuse to recognize your worth. And if you're watching this, maybe you needed to hear that too. Maybe you've been written out of someone's story, but that doesn't mean you can't start writing your own. So here's my question for you. Have you ever had to walk away from people who were supposed to love you? Do you believe peace is worth more than approval? Drop a 1 in the comments if this story hit home for you, or tell me where you're watching from. I'd love to know who's listening. And if this story didn't resonate with you, tell me why. Everyone's truth deserves to be heard. If you felt this video spoke to your heart, hit that subscribe button and follow the channel, because there are more stories like this coming. Real, raw, and made for you. Until next time, Aileen.